The first sensation was the cold, a shocking, unforgiving chill seeping through the thin fabric of her shirt as her shoulder, and then her cheek met the unyielding linoleum of the Northwood High hallway. Then came the sound, a sickening, wet thud of flesh and bone against hard floor, followed by the chaotic scatter of paper, the sharp clatter of a binder bursting open, and the tinny skitter of her pens rolling away like fleeing insects. But the sound that truly shattered the air, that made the fluorescent lights above seem to buzz with a cruel intensity, was the laughter. It wasn't just one laugh, it was a cascade, led by a sharp, braying horn of mockery that belonged to Jake Thompson, and echoed by the sycophantic chuckles of his shadows, Liam and Cody. In the 3 seconds it took for Maya Jones to hit the ground, the entire ecosystem of the senior class hallway shifted. If you have ever felt the floor drop out from under your world, if you have ever known the white, hot shame of being the target, then you understand why this story isn't just about a fall. It's about the rise that follows. Subscribe and join this channel because we are about to witness a transformation that will redefine an entire school. Maya lay there for a moment that stretched into an eternity. The gritty texture of the floor was a stark reality against her skin. She could smell the industrial cleaner, the faint scent of sweat from 100 passing students, and the distinct aroma of her own humiliation. Her biology textbook, splayed open beside her head, showed a diagram of a dissected frog, its innards exposed for all to see. She felt a kinship with that frog. Her own insides, her private thoughts, her quiet hopes, were now splayed open for the amusement of the predators. She saw the scuffed, expensive white sneakers of Jake Thompson step deliberately over her scattered homework, the essay on Shakespeare she'd spent all weekend perfecting, now adorned with a dusty footprint. "Whoa, watch your step, clumsy." His voice dripped with a condescension that was both practiced and effortless. He stood over her, not as a person but as an institution. The blue and yellow varsity jacket was a uniform of power. His blonde hair, artfully messy, caught the harsh light. He was the star quarterback, the king of Northwood High, and she was just a piece of lint on his royal robe. The bystanders formed a ragged, silent circle. Their faces were a mosaic of complicity. Some, like Sarah Miller from her art class, looked away quickly, a flush of shame on her cheeks, unable to meet Maya's gaze. Others, their thumbs already flying over the glass screens of their phones, recorded the spectacle. They were the archivists of cruelty, turning her pain into digital content to be consumed, shared, and forgotten. This was the food chain of the American high school hallway, a brutal and unspoken hierarchy. And Maya, the quiet girl with the fiery red hair that she always tried to tame into a simple braid, had always occupied the lowest rung. She was the one who gave monosyllabic answers in history, the one who ate her peanut butter sandwich alone on a bench outside the library, the one whose name was a footnote in the yearbook. She was a ghost, and today, Jake Thompson had decided to walk right through her. What no one in that hallway, not even the most observant teacher, could have fathomed was that the shy, seemingly fragile Maya Jones was a living paradox. They didn't know about the dojo 30 miles away, a place that smelled of sweat, effort, and polished pine. They didn't know about the calluses on her knuckles, the muscle memory ingrained in her limbs through thousands of repetitions, or the trophies that gleamed in a case at that other building, golden testaments to a ferocious discipline. For 8 years, since a particularly brutal bout of childhood teasing over her hair, and her quiet nature had reduced her to a sobbing mess, Maya had been training in Shotokan karate. Her parents, hoping to build her confidence, had enrolled her in a class. They never imagined they were unleashing a storm. She wasn't just a student, she was a prodigy. By 14, she was winning regional tournaments. By 16, she was the 2-time undefeated state champion in her weight class. Her sensei, a stern, graceful man named Mr. Yamato, called her Shizukana Arashi, the silent storm. In the dojo, she was a force of nature. Her ki was a thunderclap that came from the depths of her soul. Her movements were a blend of poetry and physics. Every block, every strike, every kick was a perfect equation of power and control. At school, she was Maya, the ghost. It was a conscious choice, a pact she'd made with her parents and herself. She wanted a normal life, a life where she wasn't the karate girl. But as she pushed herself up from the floor, the heat of 100 stares on her back, she realized the fundamental flaw in that plan. You can't have normalcy when you are seen as prey. She didn't cry. She didn't shout. She simply began to gather her things, her movements slow, deliberate, almost ritualistic. She ignored Liam's offered hand, a gesture that felt more like a prop in their performance of dominance than any genuine offer of help. When her eyes met Jake's, he actually flinched. He was expecting tears, a whimper, a plea. He was not expecting the cool, flat, sea-green assessment he found there. It was the look a hawk gives a field mouse before the dive. It unnerved him, and his bravado, for just a second, flickered. What? He sneered, trying to reclaim the moment. You gonna cry now? Go on, Red. Give us a show. We're all watching. Maya said nothing. She simply stacked her papers, slid her pens into her binder, and stood. She brushed the dust from her jeans with a sharp, final slap of her hand. Then she walked. The crowd parted for her, not out of respect, but out of a confused unease. The script had been violated. The victim had refused to play her part. The video, titled "Jake Puns the Ginger Nerd," spread through the school's social networks like a virus. For a day, Maya was infamous. The quiet humiliation she had known for years was now amplified, digitized, and permanent. The teachers, as always, were willfully blind. Mr. Davies, the biology teacher whose class she was late for, simply sighed and said, "Try to be more careful, Maya. Hallways are for walking, not lounging." Jake's father was on the school board and the largest donor to the new football field. Jake was golden, untouchable. And the bullying, emboldened by its digital success, evolved. It became a focused, insidious campaign. Her locker was found stuffed with crumpled paper, the word "flagell" scrawled across it in black marker. One day, her lunch tray was accidentally bumped from her hands, sending a mess of spaghetti and chocolate milk across the cafeteria floor, a modern, day scarlet letter made of marinara. Whispers of clumsy, weirdo, and freak followed her like a toxic mist. Through it all, Maya's silence was her armor. But at home, in the sanctity of the dojo, her training became something else. It was no longer about technique, it was about catharsis. Her katas, the pre-arranged sequences of movement, were performed with a new, terrifying intensity. When she struck the makiwara pad, the hardened straw post used for conditioning, the impact wasn't just a sound, it was a statement. Thwack for the shove. Thwack for the laughter. Thwack for the pity in Sarah's eyes. Her knuckles were raw, her muscles screamed, but the fire inside her burned brighter. Mr. Yamato watched her one evening after everyone else had left. "Maya," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Your technique is perfect. But your spirit is clouded with anger. Anger is a flame. It can forge a weapon, or it can burn the hand that wields it. The true warrior, the Bushi, does not draw her sword for pride or for revenge. She draws it only when the path of peace has been completely eroded, and only to restore balance. To protect, not to punish. The storm inside you must be guided, or it will destroy you." The pivotal moment, the event that turned a private war into a public spectacle, was the fall pep rally. The entire student body was packed into the sweltering gym, a cacophony of shrieks, stomping feet, and the blaring school fight song. The air was thick with the smell of popcorn, sweat, and cheap perfume. Jake Thompson was, of course, the sun around which this noisy universe revolved. He led the chants, his voice amplified by a microphone, his smile a blinding beacon of privilege. During a series of silly games designed to humiliate teachers and selected students, the principal, a well-meaning but oblivious man named Dr. Evans, called for student volunteers. Jake, his eyes scanning the bleachers with predatory glee, found his target. He pointed a finger, a modern-day bolt of lightning, straight at Maya. She was trying to become one with the metal bleachers, her book a shield in front of her face. "Let's really get this spirit going!" Jake boomed into the mic. "How about we see what the quiet ones can do? Come on down, Red! Don't be shy!" "Let's see if you can stay on your feet for this one." The crowd roared its approval, a mindless, joyous beast. It was a trap, beautifully baited with peer pressure and school spirit. Maya's blood ran cold, then instantly boiled. She looked at Mr. Yamato's words in her mind. The path of peace has been completely eroded. She closed her book. She stood, and she walked down the bleachers, each step feeling like she was descending into an arena. The challenge was a classic break a 1-inch thick pine board with your hand. The woodshop teacher, Mr. Gable, held it steady. Jake went first, of course. He made a huge production of it, rolling his shoulders, shaking out his hands, playing to the crowd. He took a wild, roundhouse swing, more suited to a bar fight than a martial arts demonstration. The board cracked messily, splinters flying. The gym erupted, he basked in it, holding the two pieces over his head like trophies, a triumphant gladiator. Then it was Maya's turn. The snickers were audible as she stepped forward. Dr. Evans joked, "Okay, Maya, you might need a running start. Don't hurt yourself." She ignored him. The world narrowed to the board in Mr. Gable's hands. The grain of the wood, the slight knots, the way the light reflected off its surface. The noise of the thousand-strong crowd faded into a distant, muffled roar. Her breathing slowed, becoming deep and rhythmic. Her feet settled into a natural, balanced stance. Zenketsu dachi, so subtle most wouldn't even notice the shift. She wasn't Maya the victim. She wasn't even Maya the student. She was a vessel for 8 years of discipline. Her right hand formed a perfect shudo, a knife hand. There was no wind-up, no theatricality. It was a simple, explosive extension of her body, a straight line from her core to the center of the board. The sound it made was not a crack. It was a deafening, conclusive snap that cut through the noise of the gym like a gunshot. The board didn't just break. It seemed to disintegrate into two perfectly clean pieces that clattered to the floor with a final, resonant thud. The silence was immediate and profound. It was a physical presence, heavy and shocking. 1,000 faces, once contorted with mindless cheer, were now frozen in disbelief. Teachers on the stage stared, their mouths agape. Jake's triumphant smile had melted away, replaced by a slack-jawed expression of pure, unadulterated shock. He looked from the broken pieces on the floor to the quiet, unassuming girl who had done it with an efficiency that mocked his own messy effort. Maya didn't smile. She didn't raise her arms. She simply brought her hands to her sides, bowed slightly and formally to a stunned Mr. Gable, her face an unreadable mask of calm. Then she turned and walked back to her seat. The sea of students parted for her, not with confusion as before, but with a new, awed, and slightly fearful respect. A single word was whispered from one person to another, a ripple becoming a wave. Karat. The aftermath of the pep rally was a seismic shift. The video Karate Girl Shus Dadu and Jake Thompson went viral, surpassing the original bullying video in views and comments. Overnight, Maya was no longer a ghost. She was a mystery, a legend. But for Jake, the humiliation was a poison. A shy, quiet girl had publicly dismantled his image of invincibility. The whispers in the hallways were no longer just about her. They were now about him. Did you see his face? She made him look so weak. His pride, the foundation of his entire existence, was cracking. The final confrontation was inevitable. It happened in the same hallway, a week later, as if the universe demanded a symmetrical conclusion. He cornered her by the lockers, his face a twisted mask of rage and wounded ego. Liam and Cody were with him, their usual smirks replaced by grim determination. The crowd gathered instantly, a hungry audience sensing a climax. Phones were raised, the red recording dots glowing like the eyes of a predator. "You think you're so tough now?" Jake spat, his voice low and venomous. "You made me look like a joke in front of the whole school." He shoved her shoulder, a hard, aggressive push meant to intimidate. "I don't want any trouble, Jake," Maya said, her voice clear and steady, carrying in the sudden hush. It was the first time many had heard her speak with purpose and the authority, and it was startling. "It's a little late for that," he snarled, and he shoved her again harder, putting his whole body into it, aiming to knock her to the ground just as he had the first time, to reassert the natural order. But Maya didn't budge. Her root was deep, her stance immovable. As his hands made contact with her shoulders, her own body became an instrument of applied physics. It was so fast, so fluid. It was less a fight and more a demonstration. Her left arm came up in a rising block Ajuke, not to stop his force but to redirect it, guiding his thrusting energy harmlessly past her head. Simultaneously, her right leg executed a perfect, sweeping Diashi Barai, hooking behind his forward ankle. She used his own aggression, his own weight, his own momentum. He was a puppet, and she had just cut his strings. One moment he was the aggressor, the next he was airborne, his body parallel to the floor for a breathtaking second before he landed on his back with a loud, breath-stealing WSUMP. The collective gasp from the crowd was a sound of pure, unadulterated shock. The reaction was instinctual. Liam lunged forward, grabbing for her arm. Maya didn't flinch. She pivoted on the ball of her foot, her body a whirlwind of controlled motion. Her right hand shot out in a sharp, open-handed strike, a shudo uchi. to the nerve cluster on his shoulder. It wasn't meant to break bone, but to send a debilitating, numbing shock down his arm. Liam cried out, his grip releasing as his arm fell uselessly to his side, a pins and needles fire raging through it. He stumbled back, colliding with a wide-eyed Cody who froze, his will to fight evaporating on the spot. The entire exchange, from Jake's shove to Liam's retreat, took less than 4 seconds. 3 moves, 3 threats neutralized, no fists thrown, no kicks launched. Just precise, devastating efficiency. Maya stood over Jake, who was wheezing, trying to draw air back into his lungs. She didn't look triumphant. She looked resolved. The storm had passed. "I said I didn't want any trouble," she repeated, her voice calm but carrying an undeniable power. "The next time you touch me, I won't be so polite. My dojo teaches self-defense. But my sensei also taught me that once the threat is neutralized, the fight is over. You are neutralized, Jake." Then, she slowly turned her head, her sea-green eyes scanning the circle of phones, meeting the lenses one by one. "And for everyone filming this," she added, a flicker of something sharp and knowing in her gaze, "I hope you got my good side." She then turned and walked away, not with haste, but with a quiet, unshakable dignity. She left behind a silence more powerful than any applause, and a legend that would be told and retold for years to come. The videos from that day, titled The Rakonanji, Karate Champion Destrau's Bullies, exploded. They were picked up by local news, featured on sports blogs, and discussed on online forums. She was hailed as a hero, a symbol for the anti-bullying movement. But for Maya, the public victory was complex. The notoriety was a heavy cloak. Jake, Lime, and Cody were given suspensions. The school implemented a new, serious anti-bullying program. But the normal life she had craved was gone forever. In the weeks that followed, a different kind of quiet settled around her. It wasn't the silence of isolation, but the silence of respect. Students who had never seen her now nodded in the hallways. Sarah from art class started sitting with her at lunch, tentatively at first, then with genuine curiosity, asking about karate not as a weapon, but as an art. Maya learned that her strength wasn't just in her ability to break boards or defend herself. It was in the courage to finally stop hiding. The quiet girl was gone. In her place was Maya Jones, a person who had walked through fire and emerged, not scorched, but tempered. She learned that sometimes the greatest strength is not in hiding your light to avoid attention, but in letting it shine so brilliantly that it forces the shadows to retreat, illuminating a path not just for yourself, but for everyone else who has ever been pushed down. Her journey was one of silent pain, breathtaking resilience, and powerful empowerment. It was a story that unfolded in the most ordinary of places, revealing the extraordinary battles fought there every single day. It makes me wonder about all of you watching this, in your own corners of the world, facing your own quiet battles, your own hallways, your own offices, your own personal struggles. From which part of the country are you watching this video? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one, because every single one of you has a story too.